I wasn't. Thank you, Pam. I'm sort of going to be talking about something which I'm sure all of you are going to be interested in. It is one of those projects that is going to be a big story, and a good story, if you like, not just a story, but something that can happen in our lifetime even. It's a story about how things can be better in so many ways. And today we're going to be talking about the Bering Tunnel, because the Bering Tunnel is the strip of sea that is between Alaska and Asia, Russia, if you like. And it's quite narrow there. But, you know, plans that have been there in the early years by Russia, by other people, to build a bridge didn't really get very far. And you can see why that thing didn't really sort of had much traction, because what had happened was that the difficulty of making something like that, where the weather was very sort of unfriendly, if you like, very severe weather. And of course, the melting of ice and all these big changes meant that the bridges would not be very safe. And furthermore, because of this severe weather, the population that this bridge would be connecting to would also be closed to a large extent because of the lack of communication between the centers, because of permafrost, because of, you know, snowed up lines and so on. We'll talk about this a little bit later. But initially, what we will talk about is basically this big idea that we are going to have a tunnel between Alaska and Asia. And this tunnel is not only just going to be between those two big sort of continents, but rather be connecting from Los Angeles right up to Shanghai. So you can see how big that program is going to be, or project. So what are we going to talk about today? We'll talk about the Elon Musk's project. We have heard so much about Elon Musk before. And why do we talk about him so much? Why? Because he's doing this gigantic project, which nobody else as an individual has undertaken. And we've seen in the past, you know, he's got the SpaceX, and he's got the Tesla battery electric cars, and then you've got this solar panels, and, you know, all to do with energy, and then Neuralink to do with the brain. And, you know, think of it, he's got his interest in it, and he's funding a lot of them. And this one is something that also has to do with this Bering company. Bering means tunneling company, which he already has initiated some years ago, and is already underway making these tunnels. So what we'll be talking about is the tunnel from LA to Shanghai, which is a huge sort of undertaking. What would be the impact on shipping and airlines? And of course, what would be the benefits of such a scheme, such a project? And then we'll talk a little bit about the historical ideas, because Russia and China have been also thinking about doing something in years past. And we'll talk about what those ideas were of Russia and China, and also recently they want to collaborate as well with each other. Okay, now here is this global sort of map that I've got here. And on this side, you can see Los Angeles in North America. And on this side is Shanghai, and it's practically a straight line going through Alaska. Now that is because we have a, you know, the Earth is a globe. So when we visualize usually on a map, LA and then Shanghai, we see it across the Pacific. Now that would be the long way to go. Whereas if you went the other way, which is this way that I've shown, through Alaska and then through Russia into Shanghai, That would be the easiest way to do it. And of course, because most of that would be land, it makes it a lot easier. And you just have to sort of deal with this Bering Strait, which we'll be talking about. Okay, what are the plans that Elon Musk is talking about? Is putting in 4 tunnels right from LA to Shanghai. 2 of the tunnels would be for freight, 1 in each direction, so that they can carry freight at about 150 miles per hour. And then, of course, 2 passenger tunnels, which can carry more than 600 kilometers per hour passenger sort of speeds. At the moment, this technology is already available. So it's a matter of having some political will to do it. And of course, the money. And of course, Elon Musk has both. So we can see there's a lot of success to be anticipated because of that particular mix. Because, you know, when you've got governments, they have all sorts of constraints of one sort or another. Like even the NASA program, if you think about it, NASA was very much constrained by the government that came in, because the funding that the NASA got for their project depended on the policy of the government. So each 4 years, they had to sort of pull back and then not do work and so on. So very stop and go type of policies. But with a person like Elon Musk, who's got the money and the brains and the thinking behind the projects, he can do it. So that's why I'm quite sort of optimistic about that. Now, this is just to show you a tunnel here. You see this, that's the size of the freight. So the freight can be put on a train that can go very fast. And that is what is intended. And you can see a 12-foot tall container being sort of carried on those tracks. The ones that we see every day, we come across these containers. So standard containers would be the ones that would be carried on that freight tunnel. It would allow for shipping containers to come from China to North America and back without having to ride on ships. Ships go very slowly. You see, the thing about ships is that although they carry thousands of these containers on them, they are very slow. You know, their rate of speed is probably not more than 15, 20 miles an hour at most. So we can see how long it takes. And the longer it takes with the fuel that they use, which is very, very sort of eco-friendly. It's not eco-friendly at all, the fuel. It's oil of the worst sort, in fact. So the emissions are very bad from the ships. Now, the tunnels will enable so that 100 miles an hour or more in the tunnels, the trains can go. And there would be electric trains, so there would not be any pollution, and they would have very little sort of by way of friction of any sort. Because rail transport, as we discussed at earlier date, is very efficient. Why? Because metal on metal is running, so it's not like rubber on a road. Rubber on a road works because of the friction, and a lot of energy is lost. Whereas on the train, the wheels are metallic and very little energy is lost, and most of the energy can be used for pulling the train. So the thing can also be cleaned up because it's running on electricity. And they're not using this bunker fuel, this terrible fuel that has terrible emissions from shipping. And of course, because of the size of the ship, you know, they have to sort of use a lot of fuel. And we'll see some figures as we go along as to how much it is. The other thing about this is that because there are tunnels, it's not going to be dependent on weather, because the tunnel will be from LA. Of course, going through the strait will also be a tunnel. Right up to Shanghai will be a tunnel. So it's not as if it's going to be on a surface. So it doesn't matter whether about the weather. And you'll be able to deliver huge volumes and save the oceans from all these shipping crossings crossings. And also because of the passengers flying, and now going through these tunnels, through these maglev trains, you're again causing less pollution, because planes, especially when they are high up, the pollution that comes out of them can handle huge volumes and much more efficient. So the volumes of emissions from the airplanes are also very damaging to the atmosphere. So if the passengers are sent through these tunnels, then you're going to be saving again enormously on emissions. Okay, now what else? What is the cost of these emissions? And there's a lot of evidence that shipping has massive environmental impacts. 400,000 deaths. This is the calculation from some of the studies that have been done. See, so what we have is really an enormous amount of people, 250,000 deaths each year, and about 6.5 million asthma cases of children and so on. So massive damage to the health as well. So you can see it's a project that is really waiting to be undertaken. So here again, a little bit more detail about this damage this thing can do, because it's about 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So if you stop that, or at least part of it, you're going to gain enormously by way of on climate side. Ships are responsible more than 18% of some air pollutants. So in addition to having the global figure of 18%, there are certain types of pollutants that come out of this bunker oil, which are even more damaging. So all in all, it's pretty bad news having shipping using bunker fuel. So the idea is, of course, here is North America and here is China. And here this is just showing that if you ferry this freight from across here, you can get up by 4 times as much gain in speed, but it's actually from 4 to 10 times. Yeah, faster, 4 to 10 times faster than a ship. The other ship with thousands of these things there. You know that ship that got stuck in Suez Canal, that had 20,000 containers. You can imagine that such ships carry enormous things there, and they're slow and they're polluting. So that 4 tunnels by Elon Musk is going to be 10 times faster. Excuse me for a second. So it's going to be 10 times faster than, makes this not work. This is why you really need to have tunnels the whole way. 2 tunnels for containers, 2 tunnels for the hyperloop. Now, it could not really hyperloop. It doesn't have to be hyperloop. It can be maglev. We talked about hyperloop at one of my earlier talks, something that goes even beyond the speed of sound, but in a type of tunnel that has vacuum in it in order to facilitate the speed. But maglev doesn't need to have that. So maglev will be just below the speed of sound, but it is as effective in ferrying passengers. Now, what are the costs? The costs are, you've got 6,000 miles, 4 tunnels, that's 24,000 miles of tunneling work that needs to be done. And each tunnel is going to cost per mile 4 million. Now, Elon Musk has already done this in Las Vegas and in Ontario, building these short runs. And the boring machines that he's got is able to not only dig, but it can support the tunnel at the same time, create the support that is necessary, and then use the mud for making bricks. So you can see it's going to be a very, very good type of machine, the boring machine. So here it is, 4 million per mile. And at this thing there is going to be around just under 100 billion. Now, 100 billion for Elon Musk is not a lot of money because his Tesla is already worth 800 billion and his private wealth is over 150, 200 billion. So he's the richest man in the world. So if he puts his mind to it and pushes this, again, one of the big projects, he can do it. Yeah, this is the travel time by train. So when we talk about train, we're talking about not surface train, we're talking about the tunnel, the train in the tunnel. The hyperloop, not the hyperloop, but the maglev, magnetic levitation type of thing that goes very, very fast. And then, of course, this basic sort of thing can then be linked further to other sort of places. So it will bring a big, big change to travel facilities that people have. So this is another picture of 4 times you've seen that before. Okay, aviation pollution. Growth of greenhouse gas emissions from commercial higher in the atmosphere where they may be causing more damage. These loop tunnels help solve this problem. They make transportation faster than the speed of sound. That hyperloop, I think, is probably not going to be the first attempt to have the hyperloop type of tunneling connection between LA and Shanghai, but it would be maglev. So you can disregard the hyperloop type of things there, and we can just think about connectivity of less than the speed of sound. So thanks to Elon Musk and others like him, they're going to make the world a better place, going to save us money, save us time to keep our environment cleaner, fantastic and stuff. So you can see, if so much traffic and so much container things are going to be, helped, then there's going to be a very big advantage for humanity. Okay, now the other thing that also is important is as climate change happens, we can see that the areas in the north, they become much more habitable. And like in Siberia and Alaska and in northern Canada. So there will be a lot more impact on the climate, on the environment. So to be able to have the tunnels and exchange of this type of goods and people between city centers and so on is going to help the environment, because the damage is already going to also happen because of this opening up of this area of the north because of climate change. So we need to keep the climate change down so that globally we're not affected that much. Now, the things that Elon Musk has already done with his Boring company is that he's put these tunnels in the Ontario Airport tunnel. There is this thing here. And then this is the idea of putting cars below on the tunnels and letting them go like this. Now he's got, I'll show you where he's done this as well. This is in Ontario and this is in Las Vegas. This is currently under construction there, to extend that. Okay, this is really talking about the Boring company, the type of work that they're doing, and the costs and some of the specifications that are there, and the costs. So we can look at that, which is not important right now, because we need to look about the global figure, what the cost is going to be of that huge Bering type of project. Now, this is again a little bit more detail about the Las Vegas tunnel under construction. It's already done, so you can see it's operational. So it's not just an idea. So he's also proposing to build with his, tunneling technology and the Boring company that he has to come up with a new subway for Los Angeles. So this is the map that he's put out. When it becomes a bit more mature, we'll talk more about that. Now, this is the Boring company doing this Las Vegas thing. This tells you actual sort of, plans that are there. at the moment, this is not complete, but only partly is complete between the convention center and the station. Now, this is a picture. Now, if you look at the globe from the pole, if you're at the North Pole here, then you can see, from LA to Shanghai, it's a straight line. See? Which we don't get to know when we are looking at the map, because the maps are two-dimensional. This is a look from the top of a globe. This is a real picture of the Bering Strait. This is Asia. This is Alaska, and this island in between. And this is only just about that's about 150 kilometers, and between the islands and the two islands, even less. Now, I put this one up simply to show you that what we have is this color showing us how deep the water is. Now, the dark blue is 10,000 feet deep. The light blue here is only 50 meters deep. So this is where the tunnel is going to put in. So 50 meters deep is not very, very big problem to manage. So you can have this tunnel going right the way through like that. But you can't put a tunnel here because it's so deep, and it would be too much of a problem. Now, because you're going from one continent to another, this rail gauge has always been a problem. We talked about in our earlier sort of sessions that we had about the Silk Road, how the trains will go from China to various parts of Asia and also Africa. And the thing that needs to be kept in mind is that every country seems to work on a different gauge. The width of the rails are different. Now, the ones in blue are all the same here. China has the same as USA and Europe and the Middle East, in fact, and also Australia. This is the blue one. I think this is the medium sort of rail width. Then you've got the other ones, which are green, which are wider, and you have that in India and Pakistan. They're called broad gauge. So if you have to go from one country to another, like if you wanted to go from, say, China to Russia and come into Europe, you'll have to change gauge along the way. And we talked in one of our earlier sort of talks that China has a technology where they can very quickly change the gauge of their train, of the wheel. The width of the wheels can be changed so that they can just be done within a short period of time, rather than transferring the load from one train to another. They can change the width of the wheels and go very quickly. And therefore, you can have that transfer taking place. But in general, you can see this is just to give you the idea that various countries have different gauges of rail. Okay, the earlier sort of history of this thing has been going back to even earlier times than 2007. And Russia came up with this transcontinental railway and planned a 6,000-kilometer link between Siberia and Alaska, providing oil, gas, natural gas, electricity, and rail passengers to the United States from Russia. Now, this is not a tunnel. This is a surface track that we're talking about. Pipelines are, of course, pipelines, but the train is going to be surface, and surface, of course, has all sorts of issues. We'll talk about that. Now, in 2014, there was also a proposal, US, Canada, Russia, China railway putting. And then again, it's again a surface one. This a fast train, bullet train, that will include 200 kilometers of long undersea tunnel. Okay, there's a tunnel there between the Alaska and Asia, but the rest of the link is going to be all surface. So, and of course, surface means all its problems as well. Now, the Trans-Eurasia Belt also had a development proposed in 2015 to support another possible collaboration between China and Russia that will be part of the Trans-European Belt. And Siberia could also include a road bridge with gas and pipelines. Right. It would also link London and New York by rail and superhighways via Croatia and Iran. Okay, so there is now a proposal to sort of be a bit more imaginative to try and connect various other places as well, but through surface mostly. And especially with China's Belt and Road, which we've talked about so many times, they want to also be linked up to the whole world, in fact. But USA is very sort of adamant they don't want to be part of that. But that's rather silly because the position that USA has taken is because there were two reports. Remember, I told you when Biden came, he had a think tank report saying how to deal with China. And that report says you can't deal with China in any meaningful way because they've got such massive projects that they're engaged in, and they've got 150 countries behind it already. The only way you can do is to target that leadership and sort of demonize them. And the other report is how to sort of maintain the edge in technology. And that was headed by Rick Schmidt, the head of Google at one time. And he came out along with the team of 200 experts saying, how can USA maintain its current lead of technology? And the report also was a little bit pessimistic because it said that unless USA spends a lot on R&D and also starts immigration so as to get the people start working from various parts of the world coming together and working, the USA has no chance. China is going to be surging ahead. So let's see how far this government, Biden's government is going to take heed of those reports. Now, the harm to shipping, what is the impact going to be if they put this tunnel? Then there's going to be a huge amount of impact on the global shipping because, it's going to be, here the science calculated that 2016 US-China trade accounted for 2.5% of the global carbon emission. So this is looking at the damage to the environment, but in terms of the actual impact on the economy of these shipping companies is also going to be enormous because, these tunnels will carry both ways the freight at, 100, 150 miles an hour and not going to be impeded by, weather of any sort. And of course, passenger traffic as well, but much higher in speed. So the shipping and the rail traffic and the air traffic is going to be very much economically affected as well. Now, this is going to be, this is an idea actually of how big the container traffic is from each country. Now, you can see China is the biggest sort of country which is sending, millions and millions of, if you like, let me just make it a bit bigger. Yeah. So here China is 235 million containers, every year. And then you've got USA about, I think, about 1.4 million containers. And anyway, you can see from the relative size how big that sort of problem is in terms of the traffic. And these are the other countries here. But you can see China is doing as much as both of the biggest countries in the world put together. So it is humongously big in its exports and its handling of containers. Okay, how long does it take a container ship to get from China to the United States? Well, it takes 1 to 2 weeks for a regular post, 3 days for express, which is by air, 8 to 10 days for air freight, still longish, 30 to 40 days for ocean traffic. So you can see immense amount of time is going to be wasted if we maintain the current mode of transport. And that's why this tunnel is going to be such good news for shippers, because they can get their goods across very quickly at a cheaper cost with no damage to the environment. So you can see also, no damage means, US and China trade by itself accounts for 2.5% of the global emissions. So you can see the amount of damage. We talk about big trading partners and so on and so forth, but they're also damaging to the environment. This is the Russian idea that they wanted to build 83-kilometer wide sort of tunnel bridge or whatever they had in mind. And it's only 50 feet deep. And this island gives them a little sort of, anchor there to sort of extend that bridge or a tunnel. Later on, they came up with a tunnel, but earlier on it was the bridge. Now, this is the problem with the weather. You can see the weather can make a lot of changes. It's ice that is flowing under it, and it's frozen, and it causes enormous amount of problems. This was conceived at 1892, a bridge between the two, Alaska and Asia over here, you can see. 85 kilometers long. Now, this is the difficulty with the bridge, the weather, and even surface strain. Road is closed, and then, of course, these ice flows are getting in the way, and quite impossible for it to be open throughout the year. It can only be open part of the year. This is showing the Russian sort of proposal, 6,000 kilometers. They wanted to link up this right up to Moscow. This is their earlier plans. But of course, it's just a plan. This was the idea that they were proposing as well. Tunnels across the Bering Strait. But the cost was very big. They thought that from Moscow to LA, it would be 65 billion with a bridge and a tunnel at the Bering Strait, but surface strain. 12 years to construct, and innumerable problems. So Russia, China, and the US for the tunnel would boost the economies of the northeast of Russia and Alaska, further integrating them into the world economy. So not only would it be able to, ferry freight across from one city to another, but it opens up the area because you can have offshoots of this tunnel that can sort of service the intermediate type of cities that might be there. Also, because it is a tunnel, it's not going to face these type of earlier ideas that they had. The earlier ideas of surface and all that terrain meant minus 20 degrees centigrade, freezing sort of temperatures, permafrost here, which meant that the rail links would not work. We saw it one of my talks, in China that we talked about when they were putting a railway link from Tibet to, which is very high up, right up to Beijing. There was permafrost along the way, and they got around that problem rather in a very interesting way, because until then, engineers weren't able to handle that problem. So the Chinese looked at a tomb of the old warlords and Genghis Khan and people like that. And these tombs had, in them, fairly constant temperature, because they were covered with stones, small stones, like a little hill. So it was covered up. And what these stones did was to sort of dissipate the heat. So the permafrost would remain a permafrost below. And that technique also meant that when they were constructing the rail, they put these small stones in a sort of a rise so that the heat would be dissipated and permafrost would remain and the tracks would remain as they are and not get bent like this. So that technology, of course, has been adopted in Alaska and Russia, everywhere now, because the Chinese did that. So that would, this is just showing us only because of weather conditions, only part of the year can be used. So connectivity here, you can take off offshoots to various other places as well. You can see. By the way, the Russian government approved the project in 2014. So they want to, in fact, link up to the continent USA. And they have a proposal, but they haven't started as yet. Here is the connectivity for them all across Russia, going right up to the Bering Strait here and into North Canada and North Africa. Yeah, that's how they wanted to link. Now, China also came up with a proposal because China has this fantastic capability which is developed. They're building tunnels, you know, left, right, and center. They are also proposing that they said we can make a tunnel and they put out this proposal. They want to build 16,000 kilometer long. And they're at the moment thinking about doing it with Russia. So the cost will be, of course, again, 100 billion, which is the same cost that Elon Musk has also costed out for his boring solution, which is going to be a tunnel right the way from LA to Shanghai, not just surface trains and so on. And he's proven that technology. Okay, so this is the collaboration they're going to have with Russia and so on. Okay, I'm going to stop here and we'll have some Q&A. Okay, well, there we are. I think you'll have to unmute yourself if you have any questions. Okay, June, good to see you back again.
Okay.
Okay, and who else is still? Who's that? Josette, I can't see you, Josette. Hello, Pam, welcome. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Can I ask you a question? It's Malala.
Ah, yeah, Malala, yes, of course, go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing is, what about ownership of this tunnel? The thing about air travel or sea is that, well, it's quite open, isn't it? As long as you can travel the seas. No one has ownership of the seas. Whereas with this tunnel, how is ownership going to change? Who is going to have ownership of the tunnel?
Well, you see, it's
going to be very restricted, isn't it?
Well, the Boring company has it's a company of Elon Musk, and he has a share in that. But I think it also will be open for the public to sort of participate in that.
Right.
But one of the things that I feel could be happening is that if USA seriously thinks about becoming an effective infrastructure country, they would back Elon Musk to the hilt because, you know, their infrastructure, they've got the money because, you know, Biden has got 2 trillion approved, and this is only 100 billion. And if he gives a little bit of support to Elon Musk, the project can get underway very quickly. You know, they're not going to start boring from LA and go all the way to China. They will probably have 100 locations at which these boring machines will sort of start boring from. And before you know it, the tunnels of 6,000 miles will be done. So we'll have to see whether they have the imagination. Now, one of the things that I said earlier on, governments are notorious for not taking good decisions. they always take, decisions far too late. And of course, it's one of the things about the free market is that the market can decide very quickly whether they can take, some decisions. And in this case, it's working. So there are two ways. One is the Chinese can take a decision very fast because they work on two systems, both the market and the state. And of course, the Elon Musk company, which is private, they can sort of very quickly take a decision. But governments are not really capable of doing big decisions too quickly. Yeah, Pam.
I can't see the US letting this go ahead because they're so sort of hyper about China at the moment. I mean, how are they ever going to allow this to happen?
Well, apart from the hyper thing that they have about China, they're more hyper that they're going to lose business. So somebody else is going to steal their lunch.
Yeah,
so very likely, because if they don't take good decisions, somebody else is going to sit down on the table and have their nice lunch, which is what happened with the TPP, you remember?
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So when Trump came and said, no, we're not going to be part of this, China quietly says, please, can we come and sit down and have the lunch? And they did.
Because I've been ordering stuff from China and I just looked it up. It actually took 14 days for my shipment, once it was shipped from China, from Yuan, to come to London.
By freight, by shipping, I suppose.
Yes, I suppose it shipped, they said. So presumably it came by ship and rail. I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah, Jim.
Talking about Europe and the BRI project, why aren't there more tunnels through Europe? And if they're doing this one,
well,
I mean, the Chinese are spending a lot of money on the sea with the deep sea ports and stuff like that. Why don't they just do all tunnels, get all the countries together?
Yeah, well, getting all the countries together, it's very hard business. This is why, you see, the reason.
More tunnels.
Yeah, the reason why China has succeeded is because they have gone to individual countries and looked at their needs and worked out an arrangement which suited that country. You see, the old colonial model was different. The colonial model was, okay, the center will decide, and that's the infrastructure. But in China's case, it's a partnership which they say is working for them. Now, the link from this route, of course, if it comes about, because Elon Musk is not stopping this company from just doing this link, this Bering Tunnel link, but is doing it for intercity type of travel as well, all over USA. And therefore, they'll have the technology to go across from wherever, from Canada to Europe to Asia, what have you. And we saw a little map where China had come up with a little proposal where they showed the same link, but with lots of offshoots coming out of it. And those offshoots are the ones that will connect either through surface or through tunnels.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask, the three countries you've mentioned as being involved, that is the USA, Russia, and China, each one wants preeminence, wants dominance. How does Elon Musk manage to get them to collaborate?
Well, he is not going to help them, going to work with them. It's quite possible because he's got the resources, 100 billion he's got in his pocket, you see? All he needs is to be able to get the permission to build that, and that permission will be granted on the basis of trade that is going to be making, big advantage to the countries that give the permission. So if China wants a tunnel linking up USA, they know the amount of traffic that is going to be helped is going to be enormous. and it becomes part of the Belt and Road type of infrastructure. You see, already they have the Silk Road that is going from east to the west. They have nothing going from, the west to the east, like across the Pacific. So this could be an incentive for them to say, fine, if you're willing to fund it, we'll give you the permission, because it fits in, because they have in fact invited other countries, even USA, to be part of the Belt and Road Initiative. But USA is saying, no, we don't want to be. So it's in China's favor to be able to have somebody else to partner with and get that. In the same way that they have allowed Elon Musk to build a big factory in Shanghai to build Tesla cars. Now they have gone out of the way to give him permission, because normally they give permission only on the basis of a partnership with a local sort of company or individual. But in the case of Elon Musk, they have not stipulated anything like that. They said, fine, you can be complete owner of your factory, you can produce and sell your cars in China. Because they knew that the technology he brings into the country is very advanced, and he would then be able to have the same cars being exported to the rest of the world, because that Shanghai factory will build a lot more cars along with the other factories that are there. So China is looking at it from the point of view of economic benefit and not just strategic advantage. This is the old formula of strategic advantage. Those are the imperial days, and in fact, USA is still following that. And that, I think, is something that is not going to pan out too well in the future, because it'll be the economic power that will prevail.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. I would love to travel on one of these tunnels. So I need to go to LA for that, do I?
Well, the moment this thing starts, I think, this is just early days.
Yeah.
But at the pace that things are happening, I wouldn't rule out that something concrete comes out very shortly.
Wow.
Because here is a machine that can do the tunneling very, very fast and at a cost which is affordable. And of course, it's not just one machine tunneling all the way through. It's going to be 1,500 machines, placed in different sort of places. So each of them does about a 100-mile stretch or whatever.
Wow.
And that can be brought about fairly quickly.
Thank you. It's very interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah. Well, what about sitting on that maglev train going at 600 kilometers an hour? Yeah. That's also pretty good. But then you can take a break, I think. One hop can be Anchorage, the other hop can be Beijing, and the next one could be Shanghai.
I wonder if you'd be able to drink coffee going at 600 miles an hour.
Oh, yes, because you see, these types of maglev things, they don't run on hard ground or hard tracks. They have a magnetic field in between the surfaces. So it is like a cushion they'll be on. So it'll be absolutely smooth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
The climate change impact is very small. That's what you're saying, yeah?
That's right, because it is going to have very little impact on, because everything is going to be electric. And electricity is something that Elon Musk company is very, very good at. They've got their batteries and they've got their solar panels. And they are already supplying even Apple with huge amounts of battery power for their own sort of campuses. Right. So energy will be from the sun or from wind or whatever into storage, which will keep for long periods. And that storage of energy will be used for all these things.
Will there be stations at various intervals? in the passenger tunnel?
Yes, I think there will be, because you see what it means is because they're underground, they'll have like elevator shafts periodically, not too many of them, but on the major, suppose you leave LA, there'll be one in San Francisco probably, another one in Vancouver probably, another one in Anchorage, these type of things that people can get out and other people can get in. And there won't be just one train that leaves once a day. There'll be many trains, probably every hour perhaps, which means that there'll be plenty of traffic. And because the tunnels are going to be directional, you don't have to wait for the other side to come and go on the lay-by before your train goes past. So it'll just be heading, at full speed in one direction, and from the other direction, it'll be the other type of train coming through. So that's why the 4 tunnels are required. Well, we're all waiting to buy tickets on that.
No.
No.
I like the one that you showed, the tube in LA that's going to go from the Getty Museum into town. I like the idea of that.
Yeah. Well,
Because the Getty is quite a way out, so
yeah, that's the plan for the subway that he's proposing for LA. Because you see, these machines that he's made, they're huge. And he always says the machine that builds the machine is very, very important. That's the machine for him is a gigafactory in the case of cars. And he's got these enormous presses that make the sort of, the body, the car parts all at one go.
Wow.
Yeah, technology is really advancing quite rapidly.
General question: Do you think we're going to have to travel so much in the future? I'm just questioning. We're doing all these projects to move people around, but will technology mean we don't have to move people around if we're staying at home more? I just wonder what the break-even point is if they've worked it out. That less people are going to be traveling.
Well, as far as goods are concerned, because you see, we've got these supply chains, right? Because no country is self-sufficient in its needs. So you need to have, goods being exchanged. Okay. So the goods will always be there. So freight will be there. Now, the question of people traveling one place to another, they're doing it by airplane at the moment for whatever reason. But of course, some of that is going to be done through Zoom as we are talking now. Right? Yeah. Technology is coming in to affect the workplace. But I think we have a long way to go before we can stop passenger travel. We need to go to another stage of, if you remember Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty type of thing there.
Because, people are talking about they want to travel to hug each other. They've now invented gloves where you can get the impact. So you could have a therapist, a massager for your leg in China or in Japan, and they would have a glove and it would do the massage. So you can get the touch, the sense of touch. You can hug somebody with this equipment. I'm just questioning whether you're going to be...
I think that's some way in the future, Jim.
No, it's not. They've got it working now. They've got it working now. You can have you can get a massage from of your leg if you've heard.
Yeah, this is the area of androids and AI who are going to be so sort of advanced that you can't tell them from a human being. So you just go to the shop and say, well, here's Susie, here's Jennifer.
Well,
yeah, those days are still
I don't think
it's a possibility.
I don't think so. I think that from what I'm seeing from, it's not that far away. It's perhaps 10 or 20 years away. This type of thing. It's coming down the line.
Yeah, this is what is called the acceleration of technologies, each impacting the other, so as to give it a surge forward. And in the case of AI, I think we are sort of moving very rapidly. But then you see, there is a other question of what is happening to human beings. See, if AI comes in with this very smart robots, uh, where are we fitting into that world? That's the question we need to ask. And Elon Musk is saying through his project Neuralink and the experiments he's doing in Dorothy and Hilda and Gertrude, you remember the three pigs that that is put out on the show, saying that they are, despite having undergone some insertion of these electrodes, they've taken them out and they are back to normal. So we human beings are also going to change in so many ways. And one of them will be, of course, not only having this high access to information and intelligence of a sort, we might be able to also, relate to each other in other ways.
Yeah.
You know? So that remains to be seen. Your gloves might sort of be around for us to experience, perhaps. But
It's there today. It's there today. That
yeah,
it's quite. It's just a question of rolling it out. And operations, they'll be able to do operations from different countries. So you could have robotic surgery, and the surgeon could be in a different country.
yeah. And the other question also, of course, to ask is, how much do we still need to have other human contact? I mean, can we do without that contact? If I have, say, Jennifer sitting in my room, who's as good as a human being, I mean, that changes the whole game, doesn't it?
The way to look at it is to do what Daniel Kahneman says, is to call it a pre-mortem. Have you heard of that, Daniel Kahneman? He does thinking fast and thinking slow. You take your mind into like 2070 and look backwards. And look towards today, and then you can see different possibilities how that could happen, whether we need human contact.
Yeah. Well, do you think?
In other words, we would call it something different. If just from what you said with Neuralink, it will be called something different.
You might.
We're
Also,
having an experience. We're having like everybody's actually having an experience on the planet. It's called living, but if you're actually having an experience, you'll be able to experience people different ways.
yeah. Well, you see, this question of personality is such that I might be able to assume different types of personality and be able to experience what that personality is. So if I've got Jennifer next to me, I can give her different type of personality. I mean, these are far-fetched ideas of science fiction, but all something that is a possibility in the future. So the future is going to be very different to certainly what we experience today.
Yep. Okay. Well, I can talk about another time, but even your point, they've got solutions to what you're just saying now. They've got solutions because when you say people have got a different personality, that's because the system of experience is invisible and it's a lot of fallacies. So it's a judgment. Once you see how the fallacies are created, you see most people are doing the same things every day. There's a lot of fallacies. They've got software to do it now already, where you make all these fallacies visible, of different cultures, of different in different contexts, to different ages.
Yeah. Well, this lockdown has certainly taught us something, that we can get by on our own for long periods.
Yeah.
I don't know how how each one is going to respond. I think we're all very individual in our makeup. But I'd like to sort of just keep things in my head at the moment and not get too depressed about it.
It's an app basically where it's for business. When you meet somebody from a different culture, you've got your how you view that person and how they view you, and everybody can just discuss it, and you can work out what the fallacies are. That's what they're doing now. I've got it on my phone actually.
Yeah.
Those feelings of different personalities are actually all made up. That's what they're saying. They're made up. There are some small differences. Most of them are made up. That's what they're saying.
I can't hear you too well at the moment.
Oh, you can't.
Anyhow, how are we doing for time? Okay, just after 4. Malela, I can see so many bottles behind you. Are you a connoisseur there?
Every time my family visit, they say, "Oh, I'd like some Kahlua." So it's an endless supply of alcohol, various types of liqueurs, because the one I don't have is the one they want.
All
So
right.
I've been accumulating these over the years.
Okay, well, yes, Monique, you have to undo your, oh, you want to say goodbye? Yeah, okay, shall we say goodbye?
Yep.
Thank you, Sheffield. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good week. Thank you.
And you too.